How do you get wine from grapes? What happens in the middle? What's the difference between white, red, rosé, and orange wines? I'm here to explain you exactly what happens during winemaking step by step. So, not all wines are made exactly the same. I'm gonna tell you all the steps, but every winery decides if they want to use them or not. So, to make wine, you need to start with grapes. And why grapes? Because grapes have the best ratio of water, sugar, acids to make a delicious beverage. It doesn't mean that there's not wine out of other fruits, but the wine made out of grapes is the best. It has the best balance. So, first, you need to harvest those grapes. The way in which you harvest them influences greatly the wines. There are two ways of harvesting grapes. You can machine harvest, which is basically a big tractor that goes into the row of the vines in the vineyard and shake the vines, making the berries drop. So basically you are harvesting berries, not clusters of grapes, you're harvesting berries. And the other way, the most traditional way of harvesting is by hand. So you cut the cluster. Big difference though, because if you harvest by machine, what you get in the vineyards are berries, grapes, without the stems. If you harvest by hand, you get clusters. So most of the time, the wineries don't like to use the stems, which is what keeps the berries together, you know. So they need to destem them. They need to take the stems out of the cluster. So some wineries like to do a selection. So when they get the berries, there's this line of people checking for the berries if they are in good quality or not. Then they usually crush the grapes, which means they just burst them open. They open them a little bit, so a little bit of the juice runs out immediately. That juice is the highest quality. And here is where you get the difference between white wine, red wine, rosé, and orange wines. In white wine, you only need juice. You don't need the skin of the grapes. So in white wines, you crush the grapes and then they press them. They press the skins because you only want the juice. You don't want any color on your wine. In red wines, you get this beautiful color, not because the juice comes with this color, but because it's all trapped on the skins. So you need to leave the skins in contact with the juice. Now, those are the two main styles of wine, white wine and red wine. How do you get rosé wine? Basically, a rosé is a type of wine in which they leave the skins in contact with the juice for only a short period of time, let's say 6 hours, 12 hours, and then they take the skins out. So the juice could only get a little bit of color. It's not white anymore, but it's not exactly red, so it's rosé. And what is an orange wine? Orange wine is not made out of oranges, it's made out of grapes, but it's made out of white grapes that have been kept in contact with the skins. As I mentioned before, usually white wine doesn't require any skins, only the juice. So if you leave the skin of the white grapes with the juice, what you get is this deep golden color, almost like an orangish color. So that's why these wines got this color for skin contact. After you got the juice, you need to ferment it. That's what makes wine what it is. Basically, wine is the transformation between the sugar of the grapes into alcohol. So that's done by yeast. And you can either add those yeast to your juice or you can leave it so the wild yeast starts to do the job. Either way, what happens is that yeast cells are gonna eat all the sugar they can find, and they find a lot of sugar because this is a very sweet juice, and they are gonna transform that sugar. Sugar is not gonna be present anymore, and it's gonna be alcohol and carbon dioxide bubbles that they are gonna produce. So if you are fermenting your wine with the skins, like red wine is fermented, those skins are going to be pushed up to the top of the vessel by this carbon dioxide. Because during fermentation you get carbon dioxide. So what you get is what we call a cap, which is this very thick layer of the skins and the seeds of the grapes that have been pushed by the carbon dioxide. If you don't mix those skins with the juice, you're gonna get a very pale color of wine without any intensity. And the most dangerous thing is that cap can get all messed up. It can completely get bad bacteria and damage all your wine. So in red wine making, they have to submerge that cap. They have to mix back those skins and those seeds with the juice. There's two ways of doing it. One is called pump over, in which you get juice from the bottom of the tank and you spray it on top. That's a more technological approach. And the, let's say, traditional approach is you have to push either with your hands or with anything. You push physically this cap so it mixes with the liquid, and you get color extraction, flavor extraction. That's a big difference. White wines don't need this cap management because remember, white wines are fermented without any skins. Red wines need this cap management. How often do you make this? 2 times or 3 times every day during the fermentation. Fermentation can take about 2 to 3 weeks depending on the temperature of your cellar, depending on the amount of sugar that you get on your grapes. After 3 weeks of fermentation, there's not going to be any more sugar on your juice. So the yeast can't survive anymore because they feed on sugar. So they are gonna die, and this is when grape juice is now wine. There's no yeast activity, there's no sugar left, and what you get is this delicious liquid with alcohol and a lot of flavors. Now, the yeast die, and they create something called lees or sediment. In white wine making, some people decide to keep the wine, so to keep it right there with the dead yeast, with the lees. And they say that gives creaminess, lees contact. Some people even stir those lees back to the wine. That's called bâtonnage. In red wine making, when fermentation is over, all the skins drop down to the bottom. And what they do is something called racking, in which they transfer the juice from this tank to another. And what you get back is the skins only, the skins of the grapes. But there's still wine inside of that. So in red wine, they press the skins after fermentation. That's another big difference. In white wine, they press the grapes before fermentation because you start out of juice. And in red wine, you press the skins after fermentation is finished. Of course, that juice or that wine that you get from pressing the skins of the red grapes is much more darker, more tannic, more concentrated, so the winemaker can blend partially or all back to the wine. That's wine. And now you have your wine. Some winemakers like to age the wine. Some people put that fresh, newly made wine into barrels, into oak barrels, or some people leave it in stainless steel, or if it's a very fruity and soft wine, they bottle it straight. So that depends on the style of the wine. So then you have the aging. After the aging, when the winemaker decides the wine is done, all the aging is done, you need to bottle it. But wine is not ready yet. It's like a soup. If you're making a consommé, you might have the flavors inside, but it's not crystal clear. It has some particles swimming in your soup, so you need to take them out. And that's called fining and filtering. Basically, you add a fining agent to your wine. That could be bentonite, which is a clay, a type of dirt that they add to your wine. That can be egg whites, just like making consommé. If you add egg whites, that's the only animal product that is used for winemaking. So that's where vegan wines come from. Vegan wines don't have any any egg whites added. So you put your fining agent, you let it sit, so that fining agent is gonna grab all the small particles and precipitate them, make your wine crystal clear. And then you might or might not, depending on the wine, you might filter it. So you pass it through a membrane. So all the particles that are staying on the wine get on those membranes. And then you get your delicious, freshly made wine. Then you need to bottle it. The bottling is very strong for the wine. So usually high quality wines, after they bottle them, then they let them sit. So they don't sell the wines yet. They put them back into their cellars for 6 months or so. So the wine feels back comfortable again and gets all the flavors all together. That's how you transform grapes into wine. It's a very long process, but it's worth it because it's delicious. So thank you guys for watching. Cheers. If you're a wine geek out there and you want to read more about it, this is the book I recommend, Understanding Wine Technology by David Bird. He's a master of wine. He explains exactly with great detail everything that happened. I based thoroughly what I just said on this wine. I learned a lot from it. So if you want to learn more about it, go ahead and check it out.